got into season 5 of Only Murders in the Building, my expectations were about as high as they could be. This show has been one of my favorite modern mysteries since its debut, and it constantly strikes such a careful balance between being laugh-out-loud funny, emotionally heartfelt, and genuinely intriguing as a whodunit. There's always this warmth in returning to the Arconia. It feels like a comfort show, but at the same time, every season has kept the stories fresh by introducing new characters, new twists, and new layers to the building's mythology. So naturally, when the new season premiered, I was eager to see what chaos Charles, Oliver, and Mabel would stumble into this time. The writers have already proven they can surprise me, so I came in ready for another mystery that could match the highs of the previous seasons. And just to say up front, while I'd love to do episode-by-episode reviews for every installment, sometimes schedules get in the way, so apologies if I fall behind. But at the very least, I'll still be covering big chunks like this because there's no way I'm not talking about how this season kicked off. The season starts on a surprisingly somber note with Lester's funeral and wake at the Arconia. Lester, the longtime doorman, has always been one of those steady background presence in the show, someone who knew everyone in the building, observed all the strange chaos from the sidelines, and added little touches of humanity to the story. To see his death brushed off as just an accident immediately feels wrong, especially for Oliver, who takes issue with how the Abututori downplays his life. Oliver's outrage over something as simple as the wording of an Abututori is such a small but telling detail, and it perfectly embodies how only murders can find emotional weight in everyday things. Instead of just treating Lester's death as a plot device, they show how much he mattered to the community, and that unease becomes the fuel for the entire mystery. That unease turns into outright shock when Oliver makes an absurd discovery: a severed human finger sitting among the leftover shrimp he had been hoarding. This is one of those moments that only murderers could pull off. It's gruesome, ridiculous, and funny all at the same time. The image of Oliver holding onto shrimp for way too long is already ridiculous, but when it becomes the hiding place for a severed finger, the show finds this darkly comedic twist that propels the entire season. It's a jarring clue that immediately flips the story from being about grief and memorials into a murder mystery, and it's exactly the kind of tonal shift that makes this series so unique. The trio doesn't waste time before diving headfirst into speculation. One of the most bizarre yet fittingly funny moments comes when they decide to check Lester's casket for missing fingers. It's such a wonderfully oddball idea.
Birthday. What the f are you doing?
Emotional, damn it!
In any other show, this would feel way too outlandish, but here it works because of the chemistry between Charles, Oliver, and Mabel. The fact that they can't even attend the funeral without turning it into part of their investigation shows how committed this series is to blending humor with suspense. It also underlines just how obsessive these characters have become when it comes to sniffing around murder. Soon after, we're introduced to Sofia Cacamillo, whose missing the husband Neki becomes central to the larger story. Her introduction is staged in this grand, almost theatrical way, with her home drenched in Godfather-style decor.
They live in the Godfather house.
See, that's exactly what I'm talking about.
No, Mabel, no. It's literally the house from the Godfather.
And surrounded by her 5 adult sons who all look like they stepped straight out of a monster parody. On paper, this could have been a cliché, but the show leans into it just enough to make it entertaining rather than stale. Instead of rolling my eyes at the mafia film trope, I found myself intrigued because it's clear the writers are both poking fun and taking inspiration from those cinematic crime families. It instantly raises the stakes. Lester's death may not just be about one man, but about an entire underground world hidden inside the Arconia. The reveal of the casino is both ridiculous and brilliant. The idea that this ritzy Upper West Side apartment building has an entire secret gambling operation underneath, it sounds absurd, but the way it's presented makes it oddly believable within the show's quirky universe. The dim lighting, the plot's battered envelopes of cash, the shady hidden rooms, it all feels seedy and dangerous in a way that stands in contrast to the comedy above ground. For me, this was one of the strongest reveals of the early episodes because it expands the scope of the Arconia's world while keeping it tied directly to Lester and Nikki's storylines. The first episode ends with an image that's as disturbing as anything this show has ever done. Oliver, thinking he's simply retrieving Lester's hat from the dry cleaners, instead finds Nikki's body hanging from a motorized clothing track. It's such a stark, chilling reveal that it completely changes the energy of this season. Up until then, the mystery had been quirky and speculative, but this moment drives home the seriousness of the situation. Suddenly, we're not just dealing with clues and oddities, we're dealing with murder. Episode 2 takes a different approach, focusing on Lester's past. We see him as a young doorman learning the ropes from George, who passes on not just the job but the responsibility of guarding the core Arconia secrets. These flashbacks work beautifully, giving Lester a depth he never had before and making his death feel that much more tragic. We see how much pride he took in his work and how much he cared for the building's residents, even when that loyalty went unrecognized. It adds a layer of melancholy to his story as we realize he was always more than just a background character. At the same time, this episode complicates Lester's image by revealing his ties to Nikki and the underground casino, secretly letting mobsters and gamblers in. Feels like a necessary plot point to expand his connection to the larger mystery, but it also struck me as a little too generic. Giving a beloved character a shady past tied to mobsters is the kind of twist I've seen before, and while it worked in context, I couldn't help but feel like it undercut some of Lester's warmth. Still, it made sense narratively, and it did raise the stakes for how entangled the Arconia really is in all this. Lester's relationship with Rondo, the doorman he chose as his successor, gives the episode its emotional weight. Lester doesn't just pass along the job, he passes along a warning. He urges Randall not to repeat his mistakes and to stay away from Nikki's business. That fatherly dynamic added a lot of heart to the flashbacks and ensured that Lester's story wasn't defined solely by his shady dealings. Instead, it showed him as someone who wanted to protect the future even if his own past was messy. Meanwhile, in the present timeline, one of the most damning pieces of evidence surfaces. The security footage from the night of Lester's death has mysteriously gone missing. This single clue practically confirms that his accident wasn't an accident at all. It's a small detail, but it recenters the mystery and makes it clear that someone is working very hard to cover his tracks. That brings us to episode 3, and this one brings the energy back up by digging deeper into Nikki's ledger. At first, the bird names and dollar amounts scribbled in it look meaningless, but Mabel's black chalk rubbing trick uncovers hidden writing from a torn-out page. It's a clever tactical moment of sleuthing that reminded me why this show's mysteries are so fun. Instead of just relying on exposition, the trio has to get creative and think like detectives, which makes the discovery more satisfying. When Charles realizes that the bird names are actually poker terms used as shorthand for bits, the ledger takes on new meaning. It's not just random scrolls, it's a record of underground gambling, one that ties Lester directly to the casino. This not only deepens the mystery, but also widens its scope, suggesting that the entire building might be entangled in ways we don't yet understand. Of course, it wouldn't be only murders without some slapstick in the middle of all this tension. When the police arrive at the dry cleaners after a tip about a body, the trio has to scramble to move Nikki's corpse without getting caught. That sequence of them pushing him around in the laundry cart, trying to make him look less suspicious, is classic show material. It's that perfect blend of dark comedy and genuine suspense, reminding you that no matter how grim things get, the show will always find humor in the absurd. At the same time, episode 3 drops strange little details that seem too important to ignore. Charles hallucinates naked quoting poetry, and the camera lingers on his dead alone tattoo in a way that makes it feel like a piece of future foreshadowing. These are the kinds of breadcrumbs that the show is known for. They might seem small now, but they'll almost certainly resurface later in the season. The introduction of Althea, Mabel's old friend turned pop superstar, now going by the Thea, adds an entire new wrinkle to the story. Buying the Arconia penthouse immediately sets her up as a foil to Mabel, contrasting the flashy world of fame and influence with Mabel's more grounded podcast-centered life. Their dynamic has the potential to be both dramatic and comedic, and it opens up a fresh storyline that feels distinct from the murder mystery without being disconnected from it. By the end of the third episode, the season has already introduced a huge number of puzzle pieces. Lester's suspicious death, the severed finger, the missing security footage, the underground casino, Nick's body, the gambling ledger, Sophia's mob family, Randall's conflicted role, and now Althea steering things up. It's a lot to juggle, but if there's one thing this show has proven time and again, it's that it can weave all these threads together into something cohesive. So far, my feelings are mixed but hopeful. The premiere didn't quite hook me the way past seasons did. It felt more like setup than a real punchy opener, but the next 2 episodes picked up the slack. By the end of episode 3, I was fully back on board, invested in the mystery, laughing at the comedy, and intrigued by all the new character dynamics. It might not be the strongest start the series has had, but it's a strong foundation, and I'm genuinely excited to see how season 5 develops from here.